Alexandra Ducsay was born on December 9, 1979 in the city of New Haven, located in the American state of Connecticut. In the circle of relatives and close friends, she was affectionately called Sandra. The girl grew up on the coast, in the Milford area, just an hour's drive from New York City. Her parents were named John and Linda. They met in 1974 in Connecticut, and just a few months after their first meeting, they decided to unite their lives in marriage. Sandra had two older brothers. Despite the age difference, the children were very close to each other. The brothers took care of their younger sister and helped their parents take care of her. The whole family spent a lot of time together, enjoying sports and group games. The Ducsay family lived in a spacious house. Sandra set up a room for herself in the basement. Over time, she not only created a cozy bedroom there, but also equipped her own gym. The girl also often invited girlfriends here for friendly get-togethers and sleepovers. Since childhood, Alexandra was fond of dancing and gymnastics, and already in high school she had a dream of becoming an actress. This was completely consistent with her ambitious and energetic nature. The girl devoted her entire childhood to the art of dance. When Sandra grew up, she began to participate in various competitions and contests, winning awards. Her schedule was very busy. Despite her active dancing activities, the girl continued her studies in order to obtain a legal education. After graduating from high school, she entered college. Sandra completed dance courses and got a part-time job at a bank. During one of her walks, she met her first love, a guy named Matthew. Both shared a passion for sports and were very hardworking. Sandra managed to get a bachelor's degree in finance. She started working as a systems analyst at the same bank where she had previously worked for several years. She devoted almost a decade of her life to this business. At the same time, the girl received a real estate agent license. At the age of 23, Sandra began working as a teaching assistant at a dance academy. Her career successes continued. The girl often performed in New York, danced at various events and even starred in music videos. When she turned 26, she began working remotely with a producer from Atlanta. Together they created demo versions of clips for music albums. The girl's dreams began to come true. Soon she had an agent in New York who helped her pass the audition. Thanks to this, she got a supporting role in one of the popular TV series. For Sandra, this was a defining event. Although her role was episodic, the girl believed that this was only the first step on the path to success. Considering such active activities, Alexandra had almost no time left for her personal life. Although she had been dating her boyfriend Matt for 6 years, in January 2004 they decided to break up. Sandra made the decision to fully focus on work and dancing. At about the same time, the girl's parents were also going through a difficult period in their relationship. Her mother and father also decided to divorce. John returned to Florida to be closer to his elderly mother. At that time, Sandra's brothers were already living separately with their families. In fact, the girl was left alone with her mother. Even after most of the house was empty, Sandra continued to live in the basement, which she had arranged for her own needs. Here was her training equipment, as well as a stand with numerous dance awards. The girl shared the home with a large dog. Despite a busy life, she had enough worries. Alexandra began receiving invitations to casting calls, opening up new prospects for herself in cinema. During this period, she became interested in charity. The girl was engaged in collecting clothes and toys for children from low-income families. Later, together with her like-minded friends, she planned to organize a free canteen for the needy. Events took an unexpected turn on May 19, 2006. That day, Sandra met with her best friend Nicole, with whom they worked out together in the gym. From 10:15 to 11:15, the girls trained diligently. After that, Nicole left, and Alexandra decided to stay a little longer to continue training. After that, she was going to return home, have lunch and put herself in order, as important things were planned for the evening. Around 4 p.m., Nicole tried to call Sandra. To her surprise, the call went to voicemail. This seemed unusual, because her friend was always in touch. Due to her active activities, she had to communicate a lot on her mobile phone. In all the time of their friendship, Alexandra was never unavailable. Around 4:30 p.m., Linda, the girl's mother, drove up to the house and was surprised to find that the front door was wide open. Sandra's favorite dog was in the inner courtyard. The white Mitsubishi car that her daughter usually used was parked in the driveway. All this seemed extremely strange. The doors of the house were always carefully locked, and the dog never went outside without a collar and leash. But this time he just sat there, waving his tail in greeting. Seized by panic, the woman tried to understand what could have happened. She entered the house, loudly calling her daughter by name. No one answered. The circumstances were increasingly worrying. Linda approached the stairs leading to the basement. On the floor, she saw large drops of blood. With anxiety, the woman began to descend to the ground floor. At the bottom of the stairs, her gaze fell on another large red spot. And on the floor, Linda saw something that filled her with real horror: women's legs. Sandra was lying on her back, showing no signs of life. A huge pool of blood had formed under her body. The girl was found to have a serious head injury. She was under the table in an unnatural position. At first Linda assumed that her daughter could have accidentally fallen down the stairs and hit her head on the radiator, which also had noticeable traces of blood. A woman rushed to Sandra to check her pulse, but there was none. Barely restraining her emotions, she was able to call the 911 rescue service. In despair, the mother tried to describe to the dispatcher the terrible picture that appeared before her eyes. Because of her strong agitation, her speech was slurred, breaking into either crying or unintelligible muttering in a trembling voice. Eventually the dispatcher understood that her daughter was lying in the basement with no signs of life. Several police officers arrived at the scene. Linda met them near the house. For several of the officers who responded to the call, this tragedy became the most horrific sight in their entire career in law enforcement. Blood drops were splattered all over the basement, especially on the floor. They covered furniture, walls, and even Sandra's memorial stand with 12 trophies and awards. The girl's face was so disfigured that it was hard to believe in the reality of what was seen. Alexandra's head suffered numerous injuries inflicted with incredible fury. The blows were so strong that one of the victim's eyes was missing. A blade fragment was found in the skull, the knife itself lay nearby. The killer inflicted blows with a kitchen knife with such cruelty that the handle broke and the tip remained inside the wound. Sandra received a severe facial injury from a blunt object. With the help of her mother, it was possible to establish that one of the girl's trophies was missing. It was assumed that it was with it that the devastating injuries that disfigured the beauty of the young woman were inflicted. The police immediately realized that they were dealing with a brutal murder, because the injuries were incompatible with life. In addition to the terrible wounds from the murder weapon, detectives found a clear footprint left in blood at the crime scene. However, it was an unusual sole trail. It seemed that there was no tread pattern on it. Barely noticeable bloody footprints were also found in other rooms of the house, the bedroom and bathroom, in particular on the toilet lid and sink. Probably, the killer tried to wash his hands of blood here. In addition, investigators noticed attempts to clean up bloodstains in some parts of the house. This led law enforcement to think about a very personal motive for the crime, possibly related to the missing trophy. Considering the brutality and strength of the blows inflicted, the detectives were convinced that the killer should be sought among the closest circle of the deceased. Most of the furniture and things in the house remained intact. However, almost all of the clothes were pulled out of the closet and scattered on the bed and floor, although the jewelry and money, which would have primarily interested robbers, did not disappear. It seemed that the criminal was looking for something. According to the police, Sandra was attacked when she went down to the basement. She was pushed down the stairs, as a result of which the girl received the first injury by hitting her head on the radiator. However, the murder did not happen immediately, as evidenced by clear signs of a struggle. Detectives concluded that the knife was brought by the attacker, because none of the cutlery from the house was missing. Investigators gained access to the victim's mobile phone, which had more than 100 contacts. Each of them had to be carefully checked. During the inspection of the crime scene, another interesting observation was made. The garbage bag was found removed from the trash can. Probably, the killer got rid of some things in it that could become valuable evidence for the investigation. Perhaps he changed into clean clothes, and used the bag to throw away blood-stained items. Around 5 p.m., Alexandra's brother and her friend Nicole arrived at the house. The girl was hysterical, because just a few hours ago she had seen Sandra alive. The street where the deceased lived was filled with police cars. Detectives wanted to talk to the people closest to the victim. At that time it was Linda and Nicole. The local community was alarmed by the event. Everyone wanted to find out what happened, but the police refused to give any comments until the circumstances of the crime were clarified. The house was cordoned off with tape. A friend said that after the workout, Sandra was going to put herself in order and go on a date with a new guy. They planned to have dinner at a restaurant. According to Nicole, his name was Jay, but she did not know his last name or any details about him. This information was of great interest to the police. Detectives, together with the relatives of the deceased, questioned the neighbors, hoping that someone could have noticed something suspicious. Milford was a quiet area with a low crime rate, so this event confused the entire community. Alexandra was a local celebrity who starred in episodic roles in the Law and Order series. Now she herself was at the center of a criminal investigation. The scale of the event attracted the attention of the national media. The police turned to journalists, hoping to attract potential witnesses. This prompted local reporters to literally hunt for any information. Neighbors' testimonies were contradictory. One of them reported that around 12:30 he saw a suspicious red pickup truck that clearly did not belong to local residents. Another neighbor said that around 4 p.m. he noticed a dark-skinned man walking the streets near the victim's house, and then getting into a dark green Honda Accord. Unfortunately, none of them took pictures or memorized the license plates of the cars. Meanwhile, detectives found out the identity of Jay, who turned out to be Alexandra's new boyfriend, Jason Mellon. Attempts to contact him were in vain, but his sister answered the police call. She provided information about her brother, and he was summoned for questioning at the station. While talking to the police, Jason seemed nervous, but insisted on his non-involvement in the murder. He admitted that he had recently started dating Sandra. According to him, they met when he came to the bank with his friend. Being shy, Jason told his friend that he found the girl very attractive. The friend did not hesitate and approached Alexandra, conveying Jason's words to her and asking for a phone number for him. The heroine of the story found it cute, so she agreed to give her number, and in return asked for Jay's contacts. That same evening they called each other, got to know each other better and agreed on a first date. Jason was several years older than Sandra. When they met, he lived with his mother, because shortly before that he had broken up with his former girlfriend and moved out from her. The young man had a difficult period. The relationship with his ex-girlfriend was either resumed or broken off again. Jason worked in an energy company, where he was engaged in checking electricity meters in the city's houses. Alexandra did not rush to disclose information about their relationship. After a 6-year romance with her previous boyfriend, she wanted to take a closer look at her new chosen one and not make premature loud statements. At the police station, Jason said that they talked with Sandra on the phone around noon that day. The couple had a calm conversation, discussing plans for the evening. According to Jason, the lovers were going to have dinner together. At about 12:20, during their conversation, the girls suddenly asked to wait, because she saw her ex-boyfriend near the house. Then Jay heard the door open and Sandra asked, "What are you doing here?" But there was no answer. After that, the door closed, the girl took the phone and said that she could not talk now. It seemed to Jason that she had let someone in, and then never called back. All this seemed suspicious to him, and he even felt a slight jealousy. After 15 minutes, Alexandra still did not call, which caused real concern. Fortunately, at 12:35 she answered the call. They talked for a few more minutes, but the girl did not return to the topic of the unexpected guest and the purpose of his visit. Thanks to Jason's testimony, it was possible to narrow down the time slot when the murder took place to the period from 12:37 to 16:30. He said that at this time he was doing his job duties, moving around the city by car and checking equipment. After 1500 hours he went to a clothing store to choose new pants for dates. Around 16:30 he dialed Sandra's number again, but she no longer answered. Then he went to her house and saw police cars there. While talking to the victim's relatives, the police learned that Alexandra's only ex-boyfriend was Matthew, but they broke up 2 years before these events. While the procedure for obtaining a warrant for the analysis of mobile phones was ongoing, detectives talked with the girl's relatives. It turned out that the breakup with the former boyfriend did not go quite smoothly. Linda knew about Matt's criminal record and his bad attitude towards her daughter. Their relationship lasted until the guy's first imprisonment in 1998. During this period, Sandra continued to support him and visit him, but he ended up behind bars for a long time. Despite the sincerity of feelings, doubts about the future of this relationship only grew. In January 2004, the couple officially broke up. One of the reasons was Matthew's rudeness, which seemed to take on an increasingly threatening character. Although they continued to communicate with Alexandra, his behavior became more and more aggressive and angry. It was felt that the gap between them was only increasing, and there could be no question of resuming the relationship. Eventually, the police managed to track down Matt. At the time of the events, he lived with his wife about half an hour's drive from the victim's house. On the day the police arrived, the man was working at a Papa John's restaurant. It was there that a 15-minute conversation with law enforcement officers took place. The guy said that he had 2 jobs. The second one is in an aviation parts manufacturing company located about an hour's drive north of Milford. According to Matt, on the day of the murder, he worked from 6:30 a.m. to 3 p.m., after which he went home. When he was told about Alexandra's death, he seemed a little confused. Perhaps because of his criminal record, the former convict did not trust the police. However, he admitted that he spoke with Sandra on the phone a few days before her death, but their last meeting took place at least 4 weeks before the tragedy. After that, the detectives left him. However, the next day Matthew himself appeared at the station and confessed that he had lied. According to him, he really came to work at 6:30, but already at 9:15 he asked the manager to leave and left. Almost all day he spent at home, and after lunch he went to the city to take a sick relative. In any case, Matt claimed that he was not in Milford that day, or even near it. He agreed to a DNA test and provided the police with the clothes he was wearing on the day of his ex-girlfriend's death. Despite admitting the untruth, all his words were confirmed. However, both Matt and Jason remained the main suspects in the murder. The forensic experts established the cause of the girl's death: numerous stab and blunt injuries to the head, concentrated mainly in the area of the face. It was confirmed that she was killed not only with a knife, but also with an object similar to the trophy that disappeared from the house. The blows were so strong that before her death she swallowed several teeth that had been knocked out. The experts were lucky to find an important detail: a single hair stuck to the dried blood on the girl's body. It looked like it didn't belong to Sandra herself. Also, pieces of duct tape were found on her face, which were probably used to tape her mouth shut during the attack. It was possible to find out some facts from Jason's past. It turned out that he also had a criminal record, more than 5 years for drug distribution. In addition, he drove a car similar to the one described by one of the victim's neighbors. Another witness reported seeing a dark green car that stood near Alexandra's house almost all day. Jason continued to insist on his innocence, arguing that this car model was one of the most common in the city at that time. Checking his words, the detectives were unable to confirm that he came to the clothing store around 1500 hours to buy pants. In fact, he was there, but much later, in the evening, which did not coincide with his story. It seemed that he could be deceiving to put the investigation off the track, but all suspicions were dispelled after receiving data on the geolocation of his calls. It turned out that during the day his mobile phone was active, but never switched in the Milford area. Eventually, the police excluded him from the list of suspects. Attention again focused on Matt. The police talked to Sandra's mother to find out more about him. The woman never approved of this young man. First of all, she was worried about the age difference. Matt was 7 years older than her daughter. In addition, he had a criminal past and, unlike Alexandra, did not strive to develop. He did not want to work and drag the girl down. Now the detectives turned to Matt's employer. It turned out that on the day of the tragedy, he really left work much earlier than he should have. He lied about the exact time. Instead of 9:15, the young man finished at 8:39. Then he appeared at a gas station, but not at noon, as he told the police, but at 14:10. The discrepancies in his words aroused suspicion. Until 1600 hours he was really in car dealerships, but all the time intervals he named turned out to be incorrect. Perhaps he was simply unconsciously confused about the time, but the investigators considered him the killer. On May 26, a warrant was obtained to search Matt's house. Inside, perfect order and cleanliness reigned. Nothing suspicious, except for the duct tape. It was assumed that the remains from this roll could have been found on the victim's face. However, this did not prove involvement in the murder, because many people have duct tape. All other checks and analyses did not make it possible to prove Matt's guilt. The search of his property did not bring results. It seemed that the investigation had reached a dead end. The only thing the police were able to do was send the duct tape found to the laboratory for examination. It turned out that this duct tape was quite specific and rare. It was not sold in regular stores or online. In 2006, out of the nearest companies, only 3 used it, one of which was the aircraft parts plant where Matt worked. The particles of duct tape found on the face of the deceased had the same adhesive composition. This could point to the real killer. Law enforcement officers decided to talk to Matt's relatives again and received important information. According to his brother, Matt had a very cruel and quick-tempered character. He even had a motive against his ex-girlfriend. It became known that in 2002 he gave Sandra a Nissan car, and in 2003 he lent her $2,000. In January 2004, while he was in prison, she decided to break up and did not return anything. Probably, this infuriated Matt. On June 14, a second interrogation of the suspect took place, where detectives pointed out all the inconsistencies in his story. But he was able to justify himself on every controversial point. The police again had no evidence against him. Only at the end of the year, the results of the DNA analysis arrived. It turned out that all the blood in the basement belonged exclusively to Alexandra. The drops found in the bathroom were diluted. It was a mixture of Sandra's blood and that of an unknown man, but due to the low concentration, it was not possible to isolate the DNA accurately. Based on the results of the examination, experts found that the criminal was African American. However, both Matt and Jay belonged to this racial group. The hair found on the arm of the deceased could not be identified. None of the fingerprints found at the crime scene belonged to the suspects. Even the unique footprint could not be recognized. In fact, the investigation again found itself at an impasse. A reward of $50,000 was announced for anyone who would help move the investigation off the ground. In 2010, it was decided to show prisoners a photograph of Alexandra by distributing it to correctional institutions. In September 2011, a prisoner named Paul called the Milford Police Department. He said that his former cellmate, Christopher Rickards, had been dating Alexandra for 2 years before her murder. According to Paul, they were together during the break between breaking up with Matt and starting a relationship with Jay. But for some reason, no one knew about this connection. When Alexandra told Chris about the breakup, he was in prison. He became so angry that he shared with his cellmates his intention to kill her after his release. A separate investigation was conducted to clarify the circumstances. It turned out that the prisoner who contacted the police lied. Chris was never acquainted with Alexandra, there was no correspondence between them from prison, which would be impossible for 2 years of relationship. Probably, the prisoner wanted to set up his cellmate. 2 weeks after this incident, a bus driver named Jeremy, who had been friends with Alexandra for a long time, spoke up. Once he witnessed how the girl received a text message with threats from a guy named Donovan. He demanded the return of money borrowed from him, threatening to kill her if the debt was not paid. According to Jeremy, this happened 2 weeks before Sandra's death. However, it seemed that the girl did not take these threats seriously. In the end, this statement also turned out to be false. 6 years passed. Finally, in August 2012, detectives received truly valuable information. In a strange way, Matthew Pugh, Matt's cousin, whom the police had already spoken with earlier, turned to the police station. It was he who spoke about the donated car and the $2,000 that Alexandra borrowed from her brother. His long story began back in 1993. During that period, Matthew dragged him into criminal business schemes for the sale of drugs. Both ended up behind bars because of this activity. In 2005 to 2006, they took turns leaving prison and started working at the same factory. They still had a good relationship, but a year later Matt set Anthony up. The young man was convicted again. He began to blame his brother for the life he had come to. Now he decided to take revenge and tell the truth. Anthony said that at the time of breaking up with Sandra, Matt was literally obsessed with her. He came to the conclusion that he wanted to kill her. At first, he planned to inject her with a lethal dose of drugs so that the crime would look like an overdose, like a tragic accident. But when he found out about her new relationship, he changed his mind and decided on a more brutal way of killing. Anthony also said that the brothers worked at the same aviation plant, from where Matthew stole gloves and special duct tape to commit the crime. The police assumed that Anthony could not be lying. He clearly wanted to receive money for information and later frankly admitted it. Anthony sought not only $50,000, but also justice to take revenge on his brother. The information was checked. It turned out that the police, during the first analysis of the data, missed the fact that around 11:47 Matthew really ended up in the coverage area of the Milford Towers. But then he left. At 12:07, the ex-boyfriend returned again and stayed there for over an hour. Finally, the police had good reason to arrest Matt and charge him. On August 24, 2012, Alexandra's ex-boyfriend, Matthew Pugh, was charged with first-degree murder and breaking into a house. However, at that time he was already in a correctional institution for attacking a woman in 2008. He threatened her with a gun and stole her purse. When the victim tried to resist, he shot her in the arm. The prosecutor's office managed to find out that problems with Matt began after Alexandra wrote to him in prison about her desire to divorce. According to his cellmates, he was obsessed with her. In response, he wrote an 8-page letter full of threats. The girl was even afraid for her life. Linda supported her daughter and initiated an investigation in the prison, as a result of which the guy was forbidden to write to Sandra. At the beginning of the incident, Matt's sentence was increased by several months. Of course, he was furious about these events, but after leaving prison, he did not show any aggression towards his ex-girlfriend. He started a new relationship, even had a child, but at the same time all this time Matthew was hatching a plan for revenge. In February 2015, Matthew appeared in court. The prosecution argued that the guy committed premeditated murder out of jealousy. The lawyer insisted on the non-involvement of his client in the crime, because no direct evidence in the form of DNA and fingerprints at the scene of the incident was found. The situation for Matt became completely hopeless when he began to answer the prosecution's questions. The criminal tried to prove his innocence, but his testimony seemed implausible. Besides, his brother testified against him. The jury went to deliver a verdict. It was a really difficult decision. There were many gaps in this confusing case. Many people considered the accused a pathological liar. The jurors even had to ask the court to repeat Matt's testimony. Only after 3 days, the jury found him guilty of first-degree premeditated murder and breaking into a house. He was sentenced to 60 years in prison for murder and another 20 years for intrusion. That's all for now. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Give this video a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any future content. Take care and goodbye.